And a very good afternoon in my time zone. Good morning, good evening, good night to you, depending where you are. This video is all about transformation. So during this time, these days, perhaps, if you have been feeling overwhelmed and kind of shedding and mourning yourself or mourning something and you don't know what, if you've been feeling a lot of death or even suicidal thoughts, but not particularly in that way, knowing that you won't suicide, knowing that you're going through a change, a death and rebirth, if you know that you're going from seeing the world in one way and now you're kind of changing yourself to another way and you're in that transformational time, then perhaps this video is for you. During this video, we're going to talk a little bit about then what we can expect actually from the next 2 weeks. What is this process of transformation? What is this process of letting the ego down, looking at ourselves, and how can we make this a smoother and easier transformation, and why is it happening? What's going on there? So we're going to look at that in this video. So for those of you going through this, it's a big thing going through this transformational moment. Back in the time of tribes, there would be a rite of passage. We would actually honor these transformational moments in our lives, right? Back in the day, we had rites of passage. So from when a girl became a woman through bleeding, and when she has a partner, whether that is through a marriage or how that looks like, there was a rite of passage, a ceremony, if you will, that acknowledged that change, where the girl now dies, but the girl kind of transforms into the woman. She doesn't totally die, she morphs into the woman with a new way. So we're acknowledging the girl. We're not going to ignore and pretend that girl never lived, right? And when the woman becomes one with the partner, it's the same. When she becomes the mother and the grandmother, it's the same. And then she goes back to death. I suppose the first rites of passage is we have birth. So our birthday, our birth is the first rite of passage, and our last rite of passage is death, when we move on, transition to a new dimension, right? So these are different rites of passages. And in the times of tribes or ancient times, we acknowledge this. And there was a process to it, because we also need to mentally, our mental brain needs to let go of that. Okay, this is who I was. As a child, I made silly, jealous decisions. I was naughty and I stole candy from the candy store. Now I'm turning into a woman. And what does it mean to be a woman? Well, a woman means that now I take care of different girls and give them advice. And being a woman means that I'm not ready yet to be a partner. I'm finding out what it is, my sexuality, my body, feeling strong in myself. So this is kind of letting you know, when you're going through these rites of passage, like, what are you leaving behind? What does your new rite of passage mean? What does it mean to be a woman? And what is your next step? And by knowing the order and when we're going, we can really acknowledge where we are in our lives. You know, as a woman, we know that we got to take care of other children, that we're supposed to be examples for the younger ones. You know, but we also know that the mother and the grandmother are our elders, and we respect that. So each time you move up the rite of passage, you understand their different responsibilities. When you become a mother, you understand that your needs and wants become second, and the needs and wants of your child becomes number one. When you become a grandmother, you start to also understand now it's time to help your children's children, so that your children can carry on doing what they need to do. You also understand that now maybe your physical is decaying, but now you have a lot of wisdom to share. And there's also a place for each and every one in of these stages in our lives within a community. And when we are not honoring that, like the grandmas who are in in old age home, we're not honoring their wisdom and their usefulness. They should be out with the tribe and with the children, taking care of the younger girls and children, making sure they don't get in trouble, sharing their wisdoms with them, sharing their traits, their handicrafts and all of that stuff. This was a beautiful cycle that we had in the tribe, and this is missing in Western society and our community. We have the same with the men. We have birth, and then there was a boy. When a boy becomes a man, what does it mean, boy from becoming a man? Okay, you're a man now. Back in the time, now you have to provide food. Now you have to be a hunter. Now you are a warrior. Before you were a boy, you were still in training. Now we step on to be a man. Now you learn about honor, and then later you transition to being a partner. What does it mean to be a partner, a provider for your other? What does it mean to have love? What responsibilities are there? You're not just a man learning about sexuality and having different partners anymore. Now you have a partner. So what does it mean to have a stable partner? You've transitioned to another moment in your life. So we're letting go of the brothels and the sexuality and sleeping around, and now we are moving up on the chain and we're learning what it means to have a good partnership, right? After that, we learn how it means to be a father, for example. What does that mean? Now we got to provide for a whole family. What does it mean to be a father of a son, of a daughter? What does it mean to be a grandfather, etc.? These are all different stages of our lives. These are transformational moments of our lives that used to be marked. And in Western society, in the Matrix, we do not mark this. And this gives confusion. It gives a lot of confusion. Grandmas and grandfathers who feel useless, not part of the community, are home alone. Parents and mothers and fathers who are just doing their own thing but neglecting their children. Men and women who are still acting like girls and boys, right? So this is important. And who gives the rite of passage? Well, the elder, the partner or the mother of the partner, etc. The elder can give the rite of passage to show, okay, this is time. You're being knighted, if you will. You're being promoted to a new level, to a new phase in your life. And then all the information about what does that mean comes with it. And then you understand you're on a new journey. And we don't have that anymore. That wisdom of this rite of passage is lost. And it is... I personally think it's not very beneficial. So before we go on to what is the transitional moments of a spiritual light warrior, if you will, or a seeker, truth seeker, I want to talk about transformation in general. So transformation in general, if you look at nature, transformation is always happening. Everything works in cycles, right? We have cycles, waves, ups and down. We have being active, which is going up in the wave, and being inactive. Now, being active and inactive is part of the same action, right? This is one cycle, right? And this one cycle includes being active and inactive. The cycle doesn't just end halfway here and the cycle is just active or the cycle is just inactive. No, the cycle is going up and going down. That's the whole cycle. When we inhale, it's the cycle going up. When we exhale, it's down. Inhaling and exhaling is the breath, right? Transformation is the inhale and the exhale, being active and inactive. The up and the down of a wave, but a wave consists of both, the peak and the fall. It's part of the night and the day. A whole day comprises of daylight, the light, and the nighttime, the darkness. The day and the dark gives the whole, right? Being life is about being awake and sleeping, but both of them. You cannot have one without the other. Does that make sense? Brainwaves are the same. You cannot have one without the other. So when we go through life, we understand that there are moments of transition, and moments of rest and doing nothing and being inactive is part of the activity of doing. So when we're doing stuff, part of it is like just doing nothing and absorbing. That is part of the whole action of doing, the active and the inactive, the passive and like non-passive part of everything that we do. It has the light and the dark. If we're only doing, it's the same as like only being awake, and never sleeping in our lives. Well, we're going to die very, very young because we need some rest. We need sleep. It's part of it. And when we're going against the natural cycle of the laws of the universe, it's not very beneficial. It's not very beneficial for us. So to add on that, if we know what the 4 cycles of life is, you know, we have the 4 seasons. We have spring, summer, winter, autumn. So during spring, we're learning, we're growing, right? Spring, the seed grows, it sprouts, and it starts to grow. We're learning, we're growing, we're sprouting, we're adding another leaf to our stalk. And then summer comes. Wow, we're blossoming now. We're creating. We're getting into reproduction. All of those things. We're dancing and being out in the world. Then comes the autumn time, which is connected. You know, this is a cycle of life. We go through the 4 phases. Autumn, it's decay, assessment, reflection. We start to reflect, you know, on our actions of the summer, of our growth, our reproduction. We assess ourselves. We start to go within. And then winter comes, which is connected to death, with absorption, with contemplation, with death, thus rebirth, so that we can regrow and do this cycle all over again. Look at nature. This is how nature works. And we are not separate from nature. We are not separate from Mother Earth. We are not separate from anything. This is the natural cycle of life. So we should honor that. I mean, if you look at a human life, you know, the first quarter of your life, you're learning, you're growing, you are making mistakes, you're being silly. The next cycle is all about having children, lovers, etc. Doing that whole business, being active in it. Autumn, well, now we start to be a little bit wiser, we're a little older, we're not running around finding partners and having like luscious sex. We're settling down, we're having a partnership. And then the winter, we're getting prepared for our deep sleep, for our rebirth, if you will, you know. And this is great contemplation. This is when we're connected to our wisdom. And each of these seasons are as important as the other, because we cannot have one without the other. Being active is as important as being inactive. Being awake is as important as sleep. The one cannot live without the other. So when we're going through transformation, we have to understand that just stopping and not doing anything is part of transformation. So many times I'm hearing is like, oh, but I got to be doing something. I need to like actively change myself. I need to be doing something. The change is now. But even just, again, contemplation, assessment, reflection, absorption, death is part of doing. It's part of this transformational cycle. Does that make sense? So we need to honor that. So understanding this, when we are talking about if you're a truth seeker, if you are a healer, if you will, whatever you call yourself, you know, we have another rite of passage. We are the seeker. We seek for knowledge. I know that I want to know the truth about how the planets work, so I am seeking the truth. Once I have found a place to find my truth, I become the student. So in this day and age, I would maybe go and do an astrology class. Perhaps thousands of years ago, I would have sat outside and counted the stars every night and contemplated and meditated with them and watched them and drawn it, etc. Now we are so lucky that sometimes we can learn from another, right? But the best way to learn is from the source itself, if we can. And sometimes we can learn from another because it's an easier and quicker way to learn, right? So we are the seeker. Then after we become the seeker and we know what we're wanting to seek, astrology, know more about the planets, we become the student. And when we have become the student, after a certain amount of time, we have graduated about being the student. You know, you finished your course and you got your little certificate. Yay, certificate, here's your certificate. Or we have studied the stars and planets long enough, and now we get it. We close that chapter, right? You've done level 1. So what happens here is now it's time for self-study. So we've gone out actively studying the stars, etc. And now it's time for self-study. Or now we just did this course. So now everything you learned in this course, we want to apply in our own time, you know? Okay, so now we're going to start reading the stars and reading them every day and doing our friends' charts or whatsoever. We start to apply what we learned, because if we just carry on learning, we've never applied it, we're just going to forget what we started with. And if we just jump onto the next subject, we don't have the moment to absorb what we have learned and put it into practice. So we are the seeker, we know what we seek, the student. Then we have to self-study. Once we become the self-study, once we've done that, we become the teacher. Now, being the teacher doesn't have to mean that you are the all-knowing, seeing teacher. No, it just means that you happen to know 2 pieces of information more. You happen to know the name of the blue planet and the red planet, and someone doesn't. And you can name them. So in that moment of time, you naming those 2 planets, you are the teacher. Does that make sense? We don't have to be the expert. Just for a moment in time, you can be a teacher. If I know 4 more chords than you on the guitar, I can teach you those chords, and now we are both equal again. And the harmony, the balance has been made, because we're just sharing. It doesn't mean we have to be this all-knowing with no mistakes, higher up there teacher. No, we're just sharing what we know. That's all, just sharing. But we need to be self-student. When we have self-studied enough, we can become a teacher and share what we know, right? Then, as a truth seeker, you may want to find out more about the planets. Now you want to know all about their, you know, about the, let's say, about the next universe next to us, and you want to study all the universes throughout the Milky Way, whatever it is. So now you're going to carry on. Now you know what you're seeking. You have your plan, you're going there, then you become the student once more. You study, or you study from someone, or you study up there, however you seem to do it. Then, when you're done with that, you self-study, you practice what you have learned, you put it into practice. And then once again, you become the teacher. And the teacher, you might not even teach anybody, but it means that you can teach because you know your information really well. Someone once told me, once you become a teacher, then you know. So even if you just like explain to somebody in detail what you learned in your course, you just became the teacher because you know your stuff now. You don't have to look it up in the books and double check like, oh yeah, I taught that, I see, this is what that person said. No, you've put it all into practice, so you know, right? A teacher can teach you that, oh, pepper is really good for, let's say pepper cures all headaches, and the teacher said that, and you just wrote it down. If you didn't put that into practice, every time you had a headache, eat the pepper or gave it to your clients, then you wouldn't really know if that works. So you're just repeating something that you read, that someone told you, but you're not truly a teacher because you don't know what you're teaching, because you didn't know your material, because you're just repeating like a parrot someone else's words. That may not even be true, because maybe you take that pepper and you find out it doesn't work for you. So we got to know our stuff. And as a truth seeker, it's a continuous flow, right? And maybe the next round you might decide you want to be a seeker about how physics works, and so then you go and be a student. You either study it yourself, do experiments at home, figure it out, ask your guides, or you may go study at a university and find out more. Once you do that, during the study time, there's always practical time. Now, after you have all that information, it's time to do your tests and your experiments and to prove to yourself that's what's going on. Because otherwise we're just absorbing information all the time and we're not putting it to practice. So if we don't put it to practice, how can we truly know? And how can we teach if we don't truly know? We cannot teach if we don't truly know. We don't have to know everything, but the one little thing that we share, we should be able to know in our truth. Does that make sense? So I want to also add a warning about fake spiritualism here. Okay, some of you maybe have gone through the matrix. You know, you lived in the Western, in the cities, in the matrix, and at school you were just taught. You were taught a certain study, a certain information, and that was it. You know, the world started then and then with the Big Bang. Jesus lived, whatever, and whatever they told you, that was our truth, because it was put into our brain and we weren't there to question it. We just got told, and then we just started to repeat it, because that's what we did. We had exams, and then we just repeated the information that they said, and then they would give us good marks, and it was a very good brainwashing system. It is a good brainwashing system, but it is not helping people find their own truth. Now we have an amazing inner Google Drive right here, and we can find out all the information of the universe right here, right now, if we so pleased to, if we go inside, if we do the practice. But we've been very much out of practice, especially through the schooling systems. So now a lot of people are getting very excited about all this spirituality stuff in here. Well, just like the Matrix world, there is a double side to this spiritual world. In the Matrix, we kept on being distracted, right? There were movies, and there was movie stars, and you know, magazines with what do you call them? Magazines with stories about the stars of the world in them. There is you know, football games happening. There's news on the TV. There is alcohol drinking and partying, and there's a lot of things to keep us distracted from ourselves, finding that power within. Making sure we don't connect to our higher power, because then we would be amazing, incredible beings who can create whatever they want, what we want, which we can do every day. And so that power was taken away from us. Now we have the spiritual world that's been coming up, and within this spiritual world, even the word spiritual has been very tainted now. There's a lot of BS out there. There's a lot of bullshit. And we got to be careful. We got to be really, really careful. So there's another distraction there. Okay, so we're going to go out and learn a bunch of courses about meditation, about this, about that, all of these things. Well, we're not taking the time to integrate them into ourselves and make them our own and contemplate about it. Then it's just another distraction, because we can learn about everything in the world, just like in the Matrix. We learn exactly what they were teaching us at school, just like we're going to learn exactly everything that the guru is telling us, and we're not going to question it, and we're just going to take it as truth. Well, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you teach, you're just taking it in. But the thing is, we need to find out our truth. So we need to question our truth. Go within, use your inner net, use your own power to decipher if what you learned at school is true or not, and what that guru or that teacher or that course or whatsoever is telling you is true or not. You got to filter it through your inner knowing and exercise your inner knowing, your inner net. Exercise that muscle, our intuitional muscle. Does that make sense? The more that we're not, the more we still learn about everything else in the world and keep busy with, you know, the tabloids, the news, the whatsoever, or the different courses, what this guru says, that guru says, but we never checking in with ourselves and exercising the muscle that connects us to our higher selves, to higher truth, higher dimensions. We're never really going to get the truth. We're just parrots repeating what other people once told us, and we just somewhere along the line decided to believe them. Just because someone at school has a university degree, the teachers that taught us has a university degree, just because the Western doctor has a doctorate degree, it does not mean that they are the almighty and they know everything. That means they passed the Western course about, they just were able to absorb and repeat what they were told, which is a very good thing, and congratulations to them that they could do it. But it doesn't mean that it's truth and knowing. So I went a little bit off topic, I think. We were talking about transformation, but yeah, there are different distractions during our transformation time. If we're not allowing for the rest, if we're not allowing us to stop and contemplate and think about it ourselves and do the self-study, then we are just constantly being distracted with new information, new input, that we're never allowing that time for transformation. Because when we go through the transformation, we're going from one place into a stop, contemplation, acknowledgement, gratefulness, a realization, looking at the past, looking at the future, where we're going, and then we move on. And if we keep on being distracted with different inputs, different information, what she said, and not checking in with ourselves, then we're not giving transformation the space that it really needs. And what society says, if you're not doing anything, well, you're not doing anything, like you got to be achieving something or getting diplomas or making a certain amount of money or got to do this, got to do that. Sure, they told us that, because then you're busy, 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 and you won't have any time, because you keep on being distracted, to just stop and think what you want, what you need, and then be quiet and then listen. Be quieter and quieter and listen what your heart needs, what your higher self wants, what your higher dimensions are telling you. Everyone wants to know what their purpose is, what their path is. They want to hear their guides. They want to be in communion with whatever you believe in, the gods, the goddesses, angelic realm, your galactic family. Well, we need to be still to listen, because their voice is very soft. And there's so much distraction, and if we don't just stop and be soft and still, then we're not going to hear them. If we keep on having our earphones in and music and speaking with our friends when we're in nature and running around in circles, but we don't just be for a moment in nature, then we can't listen to the birds speaking and the trees speaking and Mother Earth talking to us, because we're not still. Because we keep on distracting ourselves, because we've been actually told since little that we need to be busy all the time. And we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. Because otherwise we're not achieving. We're not achieving, and we're not a real person, and then we're not good enough, and then we don't deserve love. So if you want love and you want to be loved, you better be doing something, you better be achieving something, you better be earning a certain amount of money and have certain diplomas up on your wall, and you better have a good car and all of these things and a nice suit. Oh, this is false. We were born here just to be. When we came out of the womb, we didn't need to do anything. We're just a being. A being. We're beings on this planet. So let's just be for a moment to assess, reassess. If we are a seeker, we just did a whole bunch of stuff. Let's reassess what's next. What's coming next? So during the time of transformation, the ego is questioned and hopefully gets shedded to the side. So like when we go from being a boy or a man into